They call it toxic. They say ambition without emotion is dangerous. But here's what they won't tell you. Every empire, every fortune, every legacy was built by someone who understood one simple truth. Emotion is a liability. Machiavelli knew this 5 centuries ago. While poets wrote about honor and philosophers debated morality, he wrote the manual for power. Not the power they teach you in school. Real power. The kind that doesn't apologize. The kind that doesn't need validation. Today, they've weaponized language against strategic thinking. They've turned clarity into cruelty and discipline into toxicity. But the game hasn't changed. Only the players who are willing to admit they're playing. You're about to learn the protocol. Not theory. Not philosophy. A system. The same system that built kingdoms while others built excuses. The same framework that separates those who lead from those who follow. This isn't about being cold. It's about being clear. This isn't about lacking empathy. It's about not letting empathy make your decisions. Because in the age of emotional manipulation disguised as morality, the person who controls their emotions controls the outcome. Welcome to the Machiavelli Protocol. The world has changed, but human nature hasn't. 500 years ago, Niccolò Machiavelli wrote The Prince in a cramped room, exiled from power, watching lesser men make greater mistakes. He saw what worked, not what should work, not what felt good, what actually produced results. Today, we live in an era obsessed with feelings. Every decision is filtered through emotional validation. Every strategy is questioned for its moral aesthetics. And anyone who dares to prioritize outcome over optics gets labeled toxic, manipulative, dangerous. But here's the paradox. The people throwing those labels are often the ones most skilled at emotional manipulation. They've just rebranded it as authenticity. So let me ask you something. Drop a comment right now. Do you think strategic detachment is toxic? Or is it the only honest way to navigate a world built on hidden agendas? I want to know where you stand. Because this protocol isn't for everyone. It's for those tired of losing games they didn't know they were playing. Machiavelli's first lesson is brutal in its simplicity. The world rewards results, not intentions. You can have the purest heart and the noblest goals, but if you lack the skill to execute, you'll be crushed by someone with half your morality and twice your competence. This is where modern discourse fails. We've created a culture that celebrates trying, participation trophies for adults. But nature doesn't grade on effort. Markets don't care about your journey. People don't remember your struggle. They remember whether you delivered. Machiavelli watched princes lose kingdoms because they were good men, honest men. Men who believed the world should operate on fairness. And he watched cunning, ruthless operators take everything from them, not because evil wins, but because competence wins. And competence without emotional interference is almost always more effective than talent drowning in feelings. Think about your own life. How many times have you known exactly what needed to be done, but couldn't do it because of how it would make you feel? How it would make others feel? How many opportunities died in the gap between knowing and doing? That gap is filled with emotion. And emotion, while useful for connection, is poison for execution. The Machiavelli protocol starts here. Separate the decision from the feeling. Not forever, not in every context, but in the moments that matter, when you're negotiating, when you're strategizing, when you're building something that requires sacrifice. Your feelings are data, not directions. They inform you. They don't command you. This distinction is everything. Most people are slaves to their emotional states. They make decisions to avoid discomfort rather than to achieve outcomes. They choose the path that feels right over the path that is right. And then they wonder why life feels like something happening to them rather than something they're creating. Machiavelli would tell you this. The prince who cannot bear to be feared will never be secure. The leader who needs to be liked will always be manipulated. The person who prioritizes emotional comfort will always be outmaneuvered by someone willing to endure emotional discomfort for strategic gain. This doesn't mean becoming a sociopath. It means becoming sovereign over your own reactions. It means training yourself to pause between stimulus and response. To ask not how does this make me feel, but what does this situation require? In the age of toxic masculinity accusations, this clarity gets misread, because we've conflated emotional control with emotional absence. We've confused strategic thinking with cruelty. But Machiavelli wasn't advocating for mindless brutality. He was advocating for clear-eyed assessment, for seeing the world as it is, not as we wish it were, and then acting accordingly, without the paralysis of guilt, without the distortion of ego, without the weakness of needing everyone's approval. This is the foundation. Master your emotional state, or it will master you. And in a world where everyone else is being controlled by their feelings, the person who isn't has an almost unfair advantage. But knowing this intellectually and applying it practically are different universes, which brings us to the next critical element. The second principle cuts even deeper. Perception is more powerful than reality. Machiavelli understood that how you are seen determines what you can do, not who you are, not your actual capabilities, how you are perceived. This is where most people fail catastrophically. They believe authenticity means showing everything, sharing every struggle, broadcasting every doubt, and they call it being real. But strategic authenticity is different. It's choosing what to reveal and when to reveal it, not for deception, for effectiveness. Think about it. A leader who constantly shares their uncertainty creates uncertain followers. A negotiator who shows desperation gets terrible turns. A creator who broadcasts every failure before any success trains their audience to expect failure. This isn't about lying. It's about understanding that your internal process and your external presentation serve different functions. Internally, you can be a mess. You can doubt. You can struggle. You can feel every emotion. But externally, you must project the state that serves your objective. Machiavelli wrote that it's better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. Not because fear is superior, but because fear is more reliable. Love is conditional and fickle. Fear is consistent. Respect, which sits between love and fear, is the sweet spot. But respect requires managing perception. You must be seen as competent, as reliable, as someone who delivers. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Sometimes you have to let people underestimate you. Sometimes you have to appear weaker than you are. Sometimes you have to hide your full capability until the moment it's needed. This is the art of strategic opacity. In a world obsessed with transparency, the person who controls information flow controls outcomes. You don't owe everyone access to your thoughts. You don't owe everyone an explanation. You don't owe everyone your vulnerability. Those are gifts, not obligations. And gifts given to everyone have no value. The Machiavelli Protocol teaches you to be selectively transparent, to share strategically, to understand that every piece of information you give away is a piece of leverage you lose. This applies everywhere. In business, don't share your full strategy. In relationships, don't reveal every insecurity. In competition, don't broadcast your next move. Let your results speak. Let your actions create the perception. And when people try to label this as manipulation, understand what's really happening. They're trying to guilt you into giving up your strategic advantage. They're trying to make you feel bad for not making yourself vulnerable to their assessment. That's the real manipulation. Demanding transparency is often a power play disguised as morality. So you must learn to smile and reveal nothing. To answer questions without answering them. To be present without being readable. This is the armor Machiavelli built. Not physical, perceptual. And in the information age, it's more valuable than ever. But controlling perception externally means nothing if you can't control reality internally, which is where the next protocol becomes essential. The third element is perhaps the most controversial. Morality is a tool, not a constraint. Before you close this video, hear me out. Machiavelli didn't say abandon morality. He said understand that morality is contextual and often weaponized. The same people who preach kindness will destroy you without hesitation if you threaten their position. The same systems that celebrate fairness are built on profoundly unfair foundations. And the same society that demands you play by the rules rewards those who know which rules to break. This is the game beneath the game. Everyone claims to value honesty, but they punish uncomfortable truths. Everyone claims to value merit, but they promote based on politics. Everyone claims to value authenticity, but they cancel anyone who's authentically different from the approved narrative. So what do? You develop moral flexibility. Not moral bankruptcy, flexibility. You understand that different situations require different ethical frameworks. In your inner circle, with people you trust, you can be generous, vulnerable, and open. In competitive environments, with people who would use your kindness against you, you must be strategic, guarded, and outcome-focused. This isn't hypocrisy. It's intelligence. A surgeon doesn't use the same tool for every procedure. A chef doesn't use the same technique for every dish. Why would you use the same moral framework for every situation? Machiavelli watched good men lose everything because they refused to adapt. They believed their moral code was universal, that everyone else was playing by the same rules. And they were devoured by people who understood that rules are for those without power. Now, this doesn't mean becoming amoral. It means becoming strategically moral. You have core principles that don't change, but you have tactical ethics that adapt to context. You don't lie to your family, but you don't tell your competitor your weaknesses. You don't betray your friends, but you don't extend friendship to everyone who asks. You don't cheat people who trust you, but you don't give trust freely to people who haven't earned it. This is the Machiavellian balance, and it's what separates those who build empires from those who get conquered by them. The world will call this toxic. They'll say you're manipulative. They'll say you lack integrity. But watch what they do, not what they say. The people most vocal about moral purity are often the most skilled at moral performance. They've learned to weaponize virtue signaling, to use moral language as a tool for social control. And anyone who doesn't play along gets labeled. So you have a choice. Play by their stated rules and lose, or understand the real rules and win. Machiavelli chose winning, not because he was evil, but because he understood that losing with honor still means losing. And when you lose, you can't help anyone. You can't build anything. You can't create change. You're just another cautionary tale about what happens when you're too good for the game. The protocol demands you be better than that, smarter than that. And as you develop this moral flexibility, you'll need to master the next principle, which might be the most difficult of all. Isolation is strength, not weakness. Machiavelli understood that the prince must stand apart, not because he's better than others, but because leadership requires distance. Decision-making requires clarity, and clarity requires solitude. This goes against everything modern culture teaches. We're told connection is everything. Community is essential. Isolation is dangerous. And for most people, that's true. But you're not trying to be most people. You're trying to build something, to achieve something, to become something. And that requires periods of profound isolation. Not loneliness, isolation. There's a difference. Loneliness is the pain of unwanted separation. Isolation is the power of chosen solitude. In isolation, you can think without influence, decide without pressure, plan without interference. Most people can't handle this. They need constant validation, constant input, constant connection, and that need makes them controllable. If you need people's approval, they own you. If you need people's presence, They can manipulate you by withdrawing it. If you need people's agreement, you'll compromise your vision to get it. The Machiavelli protocol teaches radical self-sufficiency, not in resources. In psychology, you must be complete within yourself, comfortable in your own mind, capable of sitting with your thoughts without distraction. This is terrifying for most people, because in silence, they meet themselves, and they don't like what they find, so they fill every moment with noise, with people, with content, with anything that prevents self-confrontation. But the greats do the opposite. They seek isolation. They protect their solitude. They understand that every great decision, every breakthrough insight, every moment of clarity comes from being alone with the problem. Not crowdsourcing opinions, not seeking consensus, not needing everyone to agree, just you and reality, having an honest conversation. This is where power is born. In the quiet moments when you stop performing for others and start being honest with yourself. When you stop asking what will people think and start asking what is actually true. When you stop seeking comfort and start seeking clarity. Machiavelli was exiled, alone, powerless. And in that isolation, he wrote the most influential book on power ever created. Because he had nothing but time and truth. No political games to play, no image to maintain, no allies to appease. Just him and the patterns he'd observed. And from that isolation came immortality. Your isolation won't look the same, but the principle holds. You need time away from the noise, from the opinions, from the emotional demands of others. Not forever, but regularly, to recalibrate, to remember who you are beneath who everyone wants you to be, to reconnect with your actual goals instead of the goals others have projected onto you. This is non-negotiable. If you can't be alone with yourself, you'll always be at the mercy of others. And as you master this isolation, you'll discover something interesting about the next principle. Power is taken, not given. This is where Machiavelli becomes most uncomfortable for modern sensibilities. We're taught to wait our turn, to earn our place, to respect hierarchy. And sometimes that works. But often, it doesn't. Often, waiting means watching someone less capable take what you deserve. Often, respecting hierarchy means accepting artificial limitations. Often, playing by the rules means losing to people who don't. Machiavelli watched this pattern repeat endlessly. Talented people waiting for permission that never came. Capable people respecting systems designed to keep them out. Deserving people losing to aggressive people who simply took what they wanted. And he concluded something radical. If you wait for power to be given, you'll wait forever. Power must be seized, not violently, not unethically, but decisively. You must create opportunities instead of waiting for them. You must promote yourself instead of hoping someone notices. You must claim space instead of asking for permission to occupy it. This makes people uncomfortable because it violates the social contract. We're supposed to be humble, patient, grateful for whatever scraps fall from the table. But that's the mentality of servants, not leaders. And if you want to lead, you must think like a leader, which means understanding that every position of power was taken by someone. Every empire was built by someone who refused to wait. Every fortune was created by someone who saw an opening and moved, without hesitation, without apology, without waiting for consensus. This is the Machiavellian move. You see what you want. You assess what it requires. And you take it, not through force, through superior strategy, through better execution, through relentless focus. You outwork, you outthink, you outmaneuver. And when the opportunity comes, you don't hesitate, because hesitation is how opportunities die. Most people see the opening and think about it. They analyze it, they discuss it, they wait for the perfect moment, and someone else takes it. Someone less qualified, but more decisive. Someone less talented, but more aggressive. Someone less deserving, but more willing. and then they complain about unfairness. But Machiavelli would ask, who's really at fault? The system for allowing it? Or you for not taking your shot? This is harsh, but it's true. The world doesn't owe you anything. Your talent doesn't entitle you to success. Your hard work doesn't guarantee results. Only outcomes matter. And outcomes favor those who act. So the protocol demands you become comfortable with taking, with claiming, with asserting, not rudely, not arrogantly, but firmly. You must believe you deserve what you're reaching for, and you must be willing to reach, because no one is coming to hand it to you. No one is going to recognize your potential and elevate you. That's a fairy tale we tell ourselves to avoid the discomfort of self-promotion. The reality is simpler and harder. You must promote yourself. You must create your opportunities. You must take your power. And as you do, you'll encounter the next critical challenge. Loyalty is conditional, always. This might be the most painful lesson. Machiavelli watched alliances crumble. He saw friends become enemies. He observed how quickly loyalty evaporates when circumstances change. And he concluded that unconditional loyalty is a myth. Everyone is loyal until they're not. Everyone is trustworthy until the cost of trust exceeds the benefit. Everyone is on your side until being on your side becomes inconvenient. This isn't cynicism. It's pattern recognition. And understanding this pattern protects you. Most people get destroyed by misplaced trust. They believe in loyalty because they are loyal. They project their values onto others. And they get blindsided when those others act according to their own interests instead of shared values. The Machiavelli protocol teaches you to trust strategically, to understand that loyalty is a transaction, not a virtue. People are loyal when it serves them. When it doesn't, they're not. This doesn't mean you can't have genuine relationships. It means you understand what maintains those relationships. Mutual benefit, shared interests, aligned incentives. When those things exist, loyalty flourishes. When they don't, loyalty dies, no matter how many promises were made. So you must constantly assess. Are our interests still aligned? Is this relationship still mutually beneficial? Is their loyalty based on genuine connection or temporary convenience? And you must be willing to adjust accordingly. This feels cold, but it's protective. Because the alternative is being loyal to people who aren't loyal to you. Investing in relationships that aren't reciprocal. Trusting people who will betray you the moment it benefits them. Machiavelli saw princes lose kingdoms this way. Trusting advisors who sold them out. Believing in alliances that dissolved overnight. Assuming loyalty where only opportunity existed. And he wrote the antidote. Trust, but verify. Maintain relationships, but don't depend on them. Value loyalty, but don't expect it unconditionally. This is the balance. You can care about people without being naive about people. You can invest in relationships without being blind to their conditional nature. You can be loyal without expecting others to be equally loyal. And when someone does prove genuinely loyal, you recognize it as rare and valuable. You protect it, you reciprocate it, you honor it, but you don't assume it. This distinction saves you from the devastation of betrayal. Because when you understand loyalty is conditional, betrayal becomes expected, not desired, not celebrated, but expected. And expectation removes the emotional destruction. You're not shocked. You're not shattered. You're just informed. And you adjust your strategy accordingly. This is the Machiavellian mindset. Always prepared for the worst while working toward the best. Always protected while remaining open. Always strategic while staying human. And as you internalize this, the next principle becomes clearer. Timing is everything. Machiavelli understood that the right action at the wrong time fails. The wrong action at the right time sometimes succeeds. But the right action at the right time is unstoppable. This is the art of kairos, the opportune moment. Most people are either too early or too late. They see what needs to be done, but move before the conditions are right. Or they wait until the conditions are perfect and the opportunity has passed. The Machiavelli protocol demands you develop temporal intelligence, the ability to read the moment, to sense when the environment is ready for your move, to feel when resistance is lowest and impact is highest. This isn't mystical. It's observational. You watch patterns. You notice cycles. You understand that everything has a season. There's a time to build and a time to launch. A time to speak and a time to stay silent. A time to push and a time to wait. And knowing which time is which separates masters from amateurs. Think about every major success you've witnessed. It wasn't just a good idea. It was a good idea at the right time. The same idea 5 years earlier would have failed. 5 years later would have been derivative. But at that exact moment, it was perfect. This is what you're training yourself to recognize. The convergence of preparation and opportunity. The moment when your capability meets the market's readiness. The instant when your message aligns with the culture's need. You can't force this. But you can position yourself to recognize it when it arrives. And you can be ready to move decisively when it does. Most people miss their moment because they're not paying attention. They're too focused on their plan to notice the opportunity. Too committed to their timeline to adapt to reality's timeline. Too rigid in their approach to pivot when the moment demands it. Machiavelli would tell you to hold your plans loosely. To be committed to the outcome, not the path. To be ready to abandon your entire strategy if a better opportunity emerges. This requires ego death. Because your ego is attached to your plan, to being right about your approach, to having people see you execute your vision. But the protocol demands you care more about winning than being right. More about results than recognition. More about the outcome than the optics of how you got there. So you watch. You wait. You prepare. And when the moment comes, you move with absolute commitment. No hesitation. No second guessing. No waiting for permission. You recognize the kairos and you act. This is how empires are built. Not through decades of grinding. Through years of preparation and moments of decisive action. The preparation is invisible. The action is what people see, and they call it luck. But you'll know better. And as you master timing, you'll need to understand the final principle. The end justifies the means, but choose your ends carefully. This is Machiavelli's most famous and most misunderstood principle. People think it means anything goes. That you can do whatever you want as long as you win. But that's not what he meant. He meant that you must be clear about your ultimate objective. And once you're clear, you must be willing to do what that objective requires. Not what feels good. Not what looks good. What actually works. The mistake most people make is having unclear ends. They want success, but they haven't defined what success means. They want power, but they don't know what they'll do with it. They want wealth, but they haven't clarified what wealth is for. So they pursue means without ends. They collect tactics without strategy. They win battles but lose wars. The Machiavelli protocol demands absolute clarity on your ends. What are you actually building? What do you actually want? What would actually constitute success? And once you know, you must be willing to pay the price. Every meaningful end requires uncomfortable means. Every significant achievement requires sacrifice. Every powerful position requires difficult decisions. And if you're not willing to make those decisions, you don't actually want the end. You want the fantasy of the end. The version where you get everything you want without doing anything you don't want to do. But that's not how reality works. Reality demands payment. And the bigger the end, the higher the price. So you must decide, are you willing to be misunderstood? Are you willing to be criticized? Are you willing to make decisions that hurt in the short term, but win in the long term? Are you willing to sacrifice comfort for achievement? If yes, then you're ready for the protocol. If no, then you're not actually committed to your ends. You're committed to your comfort, and there's nothing wrong with that. But don't confuse it with ambition. Don't pretend you want greatness when you really want ease. Machiavelli has no patience for that delusion. He demands you be honest about what you want and what you're willing to do to get it. And if what you want requires things you're not willing to do, then change what you want. This is the final liberation. You're not a victim of circumstances. You're not powerless against the system. You're simply unwilling to pay the price, which is fine, but own it. Don't blame the world for not giving you what you weren't willing to take. Don't blame others for achieving what you weren't willing to sacrifice for. Don't blame the game for outcomes you created through inaction. The protocol is complete. Control your emotions. Manage perception. Apply flexible morality. Embrace strategic isolation. Take power. Understand conditional loyalty. Master timing. And align your means with clearly defined ends. This is the Machiavelli protocol. Not evil, not toxic, just effective. In a world that rewards effectiveness above all else, this is your blueprint. The question is whether you're ready to use it. If you're ready to take these strategies beyond theory, check the pinned comment. The link I left there is the next step to becoming truly untouchable.